ਵੈਲਕਮ ਟੂ ਦਿਸ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਆਫ ਦ ਹਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਸ਼ੋ। ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਸੈਗਮੈਂਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਕਰਵਾਉਣ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਲਿੰਡਾ ਮਾਰਕ ਨਾਲ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਐਕਸਪਰਟ ਹਨ। ਇਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝ ਪਾਉਣਗੇ ਕਿ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟਸ ਤੇ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟਸ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟਸ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਉਣਾ ਚਾਹ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦਾ ਧਿਆਨ ਰੱਖਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਕਿਹੜੇ-ਕਿਹੜੇ ਉਹ ਬੈਨੀਫਿਟਸ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ। Let's welcome Linda Mark. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So Linda, when we talk about work permits and temporary work permits, this is in huge demand right now. So today let's focus on the students only.
Yes.
So what kind of things are required when a person and a student rather has to apply for a work permit, and when they land over here, what all happens?
Okay. Well, first of all, there's all kinds of work permits that students can get. For some students, when they're coming in on their with their study permits, they also will get something called a co-op work permit.
Okay.
And that's where they're going to be working in conjunction with something that they're studying.
Right.
In addition to that, you've got when students come here, they are able to generally work on campus without any work permit at all.
Okay.
And then there is something called an off-campus work permit.
Okay.
And where a student can work off campus.
Right.
It allows them to work for up to 20 hours a week.
Okay.
And it also allows them to work during summer holidays and that kind of thing on a full-time basis. There's also something called an postgraduate work permit.
Okay.
And that is something that is becoming more and more important because more and more students that are attending school here end up with these work permits.
Right.
They can be valid for up to 3 years.
Okay.
And it's really opens things wide for
Right.
them to get the permanent resident status.
Okay. So first of all, when a person is applying for getting this work permit, what are the basic conditions which need to be met? And a student who wants to come here and study,
Yeah.
is it he has to be a high school graduate and then only he can apply, or he can also come here and study for the undergraduate classes also?
A student can come here and study high school, but they can also come for post-secondary as
Right.
well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the criteria basically when you're applying? How much time is it taking? And especially because the Indians and the Pakistanis students who are coming over here, so generally do they have to get an admission in a recognized college or some of the private institutions also, which we find are quite in vogue right now? So what is the process, if you can take us into that, please?
All right. What a student has to do first of all is they have to be admitted by a college or university.
Right.
And then once they have that, then they can apply for their study permit. And at the same time, they can also apply, if they're going to be qualifying for a co-op work permit, they can apply for that as well.
Okay.
And then once they're in here, once they're in Canada going to school, then other types of work permits become available to them.
So, but as you said, this working in the university campus or outside, that has to be applied at the time when the application is given?
No.
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 Okay.
Most of these work permits are actually applied for once the student is in Canada.
Okay, right. Yeah. Okay, so and then again, it's quite interesting, as you said, while you're working within the campus, you don't need any permit for that.
That's right.
So, but when you have to go out of the campus and work, then you have to apply for it. So, how much generally time it takes, and basically, what is the process which has to be followed?
Okay, when you're dealing with the off-campus work permit, what you need to do is, first of all, students need to attend school for 6 months.
Right.
Once they've done that, then they can apply for these these work permits.
Right.
And the most important thing, though, about most of these work permits is that it does make a difference as to the school that you're attending.
Okay.
Certain types of private schools, they may not be eligible.
Right.
But for the most part, if it's a college or university that's publicly funded,
right,
it will qualify. Mm-hmm. If it's and some types of private colleges will also qualify. Mm-hmm. But that's important.
Okay.
Yeah.
And another thing what you said was that you can also apply for a 3-year work permit after. So what is the process for that, and who are the ones who can get these? Is there any, kind of specifically written in the papers that what can a person apply for 3 years, what he ought to finish off, or anybody, any student can apply for that?
Okay, the postgraduate work permits, the 3-year work permits are generally available to students who have actually taken a 2-year program
Right.
and successfully completed it. There are shorter work permits that are available for students.
Right.
If you've taken, let's say, an 8-month or a 1-year program, you're eligible for a 1-year work permit.
Right.
But that doesn't open up as many opportunities as that 3-year work permit does.
That's right, right.
So what we generally will recommend to clients is if they're able to do a 2-year program,
Right.
you then get your 3-year work,
Work
permit.
permit. Okay.
And then generally after 1 year, students will also qualify for
PR.
permanent residence.
Okay. And when a student has finished off the 2-year course, what you have mentioned, so this process, how much time does it take, and what would be your recommendation? Because you deal with a lot of Indo-Canadian and Pakistani Canadian clients of yours. So
That's right.
in that, what happens is that how much time would you recommend that before they complete the study, should they apply for this, or after they have completed this, they should apply for this?
Okay, they need to apply within, I believe, 90 days
Okay.
of completing their program. And once they've completed it, they then can submit their application.
Right.
And generally within about anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks,
Right.
they would get their open work permit.
Okay. And what is it? What are the challenges? What you are seeing in this? How is it easy for the students to get these type of work permits, or there are some issues? What are the problems which generally the youngsters face?
Okay. What I find has been the biggest problem is people don't understand the whole process and how it works.
Right.
So if, let's say, for instance, I had a student come into my office a while back, and she had taken a 2-year program.
Right.
She had studied, it was a good program, a good school, but it wasn't a school that qualified for a postgraduate work permit.
Oh, okay.
And so she had spent a considerable amount of money.
Right.
She had worked hard. She obtained a diploma, but she wasn't able to get this postgraduate work permit.
Right.
So that was a real problem for her, and it really
Right.
limited what she was able to do.
Absolutely. So your recommendation would be that first it should be verified whether that institution is, eligible for getting that kind of work permit or not.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And what we do a lot with students is students will come into our office, and we'll just do consultations with them.
Right.
And talk about their situation, what they're taking, what their goals are, if
Right.
they're interested in permanent residence. And if, once we know all of that, we can start to make recommendations
Right.
as to what it is they should be doing. Because, for instance, let's say they were going to a school that didn't qualify them,
Right.
then they can make changes.
Oh.
And if it's early on in the process,
Okay.
it's not so expensive, and it's just a lot easier to do.
Okay, that's very important what you have said, that they can also change the institution if they find. So towards then, what would be your recommendation basically, because you are dealing with lots of such cases. So as you said that first of all, you verify whether that institution is kind of eligible or not, and apart from that, when you have to apply for your work permit. So during that stage, what needs to be kept in mind, and in case if that is rejected by the government, so can there be an appeal also or no?
If there was a rejection for a work permit of some kind, students can reapply,
Okay.
or if they're out of status, they can apply to restore their status, provided that they apply to restore within 90 days
Right.
of their application being rejected.
Okay.
So it's a matter of looking at what the situation is, but a lot of the times things can be resolved. It's a matter of looking at that particular situation and then coming up with a plan.
So how you're presenting, that's what is important.
That's right.
Okay, and also if you could just summarize by telling us that after 3 years, if someone has got that work permit and you have to apply for the PR, permanent residentship, so how much time before that work permit expires one should apply for that?
What I recommend is, especially with the Canadian Experience class, students can apply often after 1 year
Right.
of work experience. And they should be applying right then.
Right.
Because as soon as they have the necessary work experience, they could get their application in. And it does take sometimes anywhere from 1 to 2 years for these
Okay.
applications to process.
Right.
So the idea is get your 1 year of work experience or whatever it is that's necessary in your
Right.
case. File your application as soon as possible.
Right.
And hopefully you'll be a permanent resident by the time your application is processed.
Okay.
Now, if you're not, there are still other things you can do. There are things you can do to extend your work permit.
Right.
So that's something that can be looked at.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for this information. Thank you.
Thank you.
ਅੱਜ ਜੋ ਲਿੰਡਾ ਮਾਰਕ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟਸ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ। ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਕਿ ਜੇਕਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਵਿੱਦਿਆ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਆਏ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਔਨ ਕੈਂਪਸ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਨਹੀਂ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਲੇਕਿਨ ਆਫ ਕੈਂਪਸ ਜੇਕਰ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਜੇਕਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ 3 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਉਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ 2 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪੋਸਟ ਐਜੂਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਉਹ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਆਧਾਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਹੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ 3 ਸਾਲ ਦਾ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਹੈ। ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ 3 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਪਰਮਨੈਂਟ ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟਸ਼ਿਪ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਵੀ। ਲੇਕਿਨ ਨਾਲ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਸਲਾਹ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਕਿ 1 ਸਾਲ ਦਾ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟ ਖਤਮ ਹੋਣ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰ ਦਿਓ ਪਰਮਨੈਂਟ ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟਸ਼ਿਪ ਵਾਸਤੇ, ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟ ਖਤਮ ਹੋਏ ਤਾਂ ਪਰਮਨੈਂਟ ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਸ ਮਿਲ ਜਾਵੇ। ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੁੱਖ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਧਿਆਨ ਰੱਖਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਹੀ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਪ੍ਰੈਜੈਂਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਕਰੋ ਕੇਸ ਦੀ, ਅਤੇ ਜੇਕਰ ਕਿਸੇ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਨਾਲ ਰਿਜੈਕਟ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਕੇਸ ਤਾਂ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅਪੀਲ ਵੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ।